Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire on SportsGrid. College basketball's NCAA Tournament begins tonight. As the play-in begins, the first 4 games begin this evening. We're going to preview those games with Gilbert McGregor from Sporting News in just a few minutes. So if you have not filled out your brackets, you're running out of time. It's almost here. Got to have them in by Thursday. And some of you have to have them in by tonight, so stay tuned for that. In addition, we'll get to the very latest on sports betting from Legal Sports Report. Our guest expert today is Matthew Waters. Brady Kannon also weighs in on some of the NCAA tournament action, but also we'll talk about how Scottie Scheffler is the hottest player on the PGA Tour right now and also preview the upcoming tournament this weekend. Those are just some of the stories that we are following for you here on NewsWire this morning. We begin with some baseball action and, yes, some free agent action as well. The Cy Young Award winner in the National League has finally signed. Blake Snell gets his contract. It is 2 years, $62 million, a far cry from what we thought he'd be getting this offseason, which was at least, I don't know, $100 million, $150, $200 million. Not so much. He does have an opt-out after year 1. I don't know that that would make me feel any better here. But regardless, Snell, 2 years, $62 million. San Francisco Giants is his destination choice. They signed Soler. They signed Snell, Chapman. So, again, Giants are spending some money this offseason, see if they can jump back into this NL West, which is very difficult with the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks and the Padres. And, by the way, the Rockies still play baseball. They're in the National League West as well. All right, good news for those of you who are attending baseball games this season at Wrigley Field. DraftKings has launched a retail sports betting opportunity, 21 years and older. I want to make sure you understand that. So you can't get in there if you're young. 32 betting kiosks, 7 over-the-counter windows. Kyle Long, former Bears player, placed the first ceremonial bet. It was $100. So you can bet at Wrigley Field this season. How about this? Now, a very interesting story from ESPN's Jeff Passan is he reported this morning in a column that the players, Major League Baseball players, are seeking removal of their executive director, Bruce Meyer, which is very interesting to say the least. Again, he works directly with Tony Clark, who runs the players' union. Apparently, the players are, not happy with a lot of things that happened in this offseason, potentially free agency being one of them. A story we'll have to follow in the future without a doubt. The New York Yankees are probably going to be without DJ LeMahieu for the next 10 days. Whether or not he plays opening day still remains to be seen. He has a bruised foot. By the way, good news for Aaron Judge. He is expected to return to the Yankees lineup tomorrow. Chicago White Sox, well, they traded a lot of their pitchers, okay? So they don't have Dylan Cease anymore. They moved Michael Kopech to the bullpen. A lot of guys are gone. Garrett Crochet is going to start opening day for the Chicago White Sox. Did not see that one coming a couple of months ago. All right, now let's flip over to March Madness and the NCAA Tournament. Number 1 team in the country, number 1 seed in the tournament is Connecticut. They're back at the top 25, number 1, trading spots with Houston after Houston lost in the Big 12 championship. They got almost all the votes, 61 out of 62. Iowa's NCAA tournament site, their tickets sell out in 30 minutes. How about that? Incredible that the women are not only selling out tickets, but you can't even get them on the secondary market. These prices are insane. For those of you who have watched the NCAA tournament for a long time on CBS or TBS or True TV, wherever you've watched it, you've seen the face and the voice of Greg Gumbel in the studio. He's going to miss the NCAA tournament for the first time since 1998, citing family issues. So Greg Gumbel not hosting the tournament this upcoming year. We'll talk about that tomorrow with our expert on TV, Simon Applebaum. And also, as we mentioned, tonight's game, Wagner and Howard tip off that it's Colorado State and Virginia. Those are the 2 playing games. The winner of Wagner-Howard plays North Carolina, and the winner of Colorado State, Virginia takes on Texas. So that is the setup. And, of course, on Pharrell Coast to Coast, they've been breaking down all of the brackets and all of the games, and they broke down the West region. Take a listen.
Here's the West for you. North Carolina is the 1 there. Arizona the 2. You have Baylor as the 3. Alabama as the 4. St. Mary's is involved here as well. You've got Clemson, Dayton, Nevada, etc.
Well, first of all, I don't buy Alabama as a 4, the way they lost out going down the stretch. I mean, what did they have? One good game when they came back on Arkansas, when they should have lost that game to Arkansas that day in Tuscaloosa on a Saturday afternoon. I remember it like it was yesterday. Look, I'll tell you what, I also have a problem with Clemson as a 6, but they're playing New Mexico. I want to see if the Lobos can beat them and prove that they're legit. I also believe that the St. Mary's Grand Canyon game is going to be absolutely phenomenal. And I think Mississippi State can actually beat Michigan State. I think Mississippi State can play with anybody. And in fact, I think they'll give North Carolina a game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock this afternoon, exclusively here on SportsGrid. A new podcast is launching in the NBA, and LeBron James is at the front of it. He, along with JJ Redick, are teaming up to create a new podcast called Mind the Game. That's the new podcast. That's the name of it. Josh Hart yesterday. How about this? 48 minutes in the game yesterday. And against the Warriors, finished with a triple-double. Knicks beat the Warriors 119-112, 10 points. 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists for Hart. OG Anunoby is going to miss some time after an elbow flare-up. He's been on and off the court, of course, for the Knicks. And for the Lakers, Christian Wood's going to miss some time, also have a procedure on his left knee. He is going to be out several weeks. All right, how about losing draft picks because you made a clerical mistake? That indeed, it looks like what happened to the San Francisco 49ers. Kind of hard to understand, by the way, this story, how this could even happen in the National Football League. They're being penalized in the next two drafts for a payroll error. They have forfeited their 2025 draft choice and were penalized 4 spots for a selection in this year's draft as a result of administrative payroll accounting errors. How about this? Discovering it at the year end from 2022. Chase Young was traded midway through the season last year. Once upon a time, thought he was going to be a Hall of Famer, a superstar. Injuries have slowed him a little bit, but he did get a 1-year, $13 million contract. This time he's headed to the New Orleans Saints. Joshua Dobbs has picked his new team. Seems like we've said that every year. Dobbs has signed to back up Brock Purdy with the San Francisco 49ers. And Alexander Mattison, who took over the role at running back last year for Dalvin Cook, he ended up getting released. And since Las Vegas is looking for a running back with Josh Jacobs on the move, Alexander Mattison has signed a deal with the Raiders. 5 seasons, 4.1 yards per carry for Alexander Mattison. Now, with the NCAA tournament coming up this week, if you're interested on getting the latest scores, news, and odds from us here at SportsGrid, all you got to do is download the SportsGrid app. It is free for both iOS and Android. You can download it now. All you have to do is scan that QR code with your phone, pop it on, boom, you got it. Absolutely free. It'll tell you about all of our in-game live programming for the tournament, which, of course, is coming up on Thursday afternoon. If you don't consider these first 4 games the play-in games, regardless, I do, and so does Gilbert McGregor. So he's up next. We're going to preview Wagner and Howard and go over everything that is happening on the college basketball court. We'll be right back after this here for more NewsWire, where it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Don't go away.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the movie that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance.
That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to
Penn
find
State's
a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But
Right.
if we make them a third,
They get in.
this
is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to be
rule.
better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
The team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
It's going to be a busy week for Gilbert McGregor. He's got to pay attention to both the NBA and college basketball. Not that he's not doing that every day anyway, but I mean, this is not only a full-time job. This is like a several streaming option, TV, video, listen. I mean, Gilbert, maybe you could listen to some games in the NBA on the radio or something. Like, I'm not sure how you're going to be able to watch it all this weekend.
You know what, Craig? They call it madness for a reason. It's a lot to keep up with, but the college games will take a front seat for a little while because you get to see the future NBA stars while at it anyway.
Yeah, you do. All right, well, I don't know if there's going to be any future NBA stars in this game tonight, but hopefully you can educate me because I don't know a ton about either of these teams. I'm just being honest here. Wagner is going to take on Howard, both well-deserved to be in this spot to get in. Unfortunately, they're going to have to play North Carolina, whoever wins this game here. So... But anyway, Howard minus 3.5 tonight against Wagner, total of 128.5. Historically speaking, these games that have featured the 16 seeds have been really competitive, Gilbert. Sometimes those first four games are not competitive, but when you have the 2 16s, it's like they're just so hungry to get that next step into the dance. Does that mean you should take the points tonight? Because I'm always leaning points, toward in these tournaments, but I have no idea. You tell me.
When I look at this game and this matchup, what stands out to me most is actually just taking Howard. Respect due to Wagner. They earned their right to be in the NCAA tournament. But that being said, they're not necessarily your typical NCAA tournament team. They finished 6th in the Northeast Conference, and really it took a bit of a miraculous run, 3 road games essentially in their conference tournament to get to this point. We're actually under 500 during the year, whereas Howard is a more experienced team. They actually hung in with some high major competition early on in the season. Weren't able to defeat those teams, but actually had some pretty good showings against Georgia Tech and Cincinnati this year. So I like Howard in this game, an experienced team, and I honestly just think they will show that they are a little more of a typical NCAA tournament team in the 16 seed battle with the right to go face the Tar Heels in the Tar Heel State. Doesn't seem like much of an incentive.
No, it does not. But either way, great story and always fun to see these games being played. Okay, so let's take a closer look here at the West region where surprisingly North Carolina is not the favorite. It is Arizona. This should be, if these two teams play for the right to get there, it will be incredible. But you do have very competitive teams here. Baylor's had a good season at 7-1. Alabama was fantastic for the majority of the season in the SEC. St. Mary's is coming off the win against Gonzaga. And then there's some long shots here. You have New Mexico. I guess you could never rule out Michigan State. They did not have a great season, but it's Izzo season, so they're 17-1. I do not think Clemson is going to come out of this region, but I really could make a case for 4 or 5 of the teams that we just looked at there, Gilbert, for coming out of this thing. Does it have to be Arizona or North Carolina?
You know, it really does feel like it's going to be Arizona and North Carolina. And there's definitely the narrative as well. Caleb Love transferred from North Carolina to Arizona, ends up winning Pac-12 Player of the Year. And it just feels like all roads kind of lead to an Elite Eight matchup between those two teams. That being said, it is March and strange things happen. Baylor and Alabama are two teams who I think people are not necessarily sure how to measure them going into this tournament. Matchups are going to kind of be important for them, and it's going to be important that they show up and play to the best of their abilities. So ultimately, it feels like all roads lead to UNC, Arizona, but a few of these teams could stand out. New Mexico is on a hot run. I'm not sure how much luck they have left. They do match up with Clemson to start the tournament, and Clemson, I'm sure, left a bad taste in some people's mouths the way their ACC tournament run ended at the hands of Boston College.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be, I think, fascinating to see if it's just those two teams, because in this region in particular, both heavily favored to come out of it. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the Thursday matchups, then we'll move on to Friday as far as against the spread. North Carolina, 22.5-point favorite. I don't know that it's going to make much of a difference who they play based on the winner of this Howard-Wagner matchup. We also have Mississippi State taking on Michigan State. Mississippi State -1.5. St. Mary's -5.5 against Grand Canyon. Alabama's 10-point favorites against Charleston. New Mexico is 1.5-point favorites. Baylor -13.5 against Colgate. Nevada -1.5 against Dayton. And then Arizona -19.5 against this coach who's been fired, but he's back to coach in this tournament against Arizona. Now, you talk about a story for the tournament. How about if Long Beach State upsets Arizona? I mean, Gilbert, you cannot give me all favorites here in this segment. I'm not going to allow it. It is not acceptable to come on this segment and just throw out chalk here. So tell me who's going to get upset in this region this week.
You know, I mentioned it already, and there's a bit of a narrative that we'll probably visit a little more when we continue with the first four. But again, this New Mexico Clemson game, you know, how much do you buy into the Mountain West versus ACC narrative that you're going to see front and center there? New Mexico with Jalen House and Jamal Mashburn Jr., led by Richard Pitino. It's a lot of second generation basketball royalty in the DNA of that Lobos team. So, you know, again, if you're out on Clemson based on how they kind of laid an egg in the ACC tournament, that could be the one. But on the flip side, you know, if you're a believer in what Clemson has with PJ Hall on the front court, who's just an outstanding front court player, then maybe that's the one that you don't feel. But if anything, my eyes go directly to that one because it kind of feels like New Mexico has a little bit of magic on their side right now.
All right, well, we'll see in that game. I'm looking for a much bigger upset, Gilbert. Come on, 1.5. Really putting yourself out there. All right. Colorado State and Virginia. You know, people are going to look to this total at 120 and go, what's going on? That means you haven't paid attention to Virginia basketball over the past decade. This is going to be an ugly game where these two teams, I don't even know if they will get to 100. I mean, that's the only way Virginia is going to come out of this thing. They're 2.5-point underdogs against Colorado State. When you talk about Virginia, everyone remembers several years ago with them losing in the first round just because of the style of basketball that they play. But Gilbert, the style of basketball that they play is also conducive to winning games like this. Would you take the points 2.5 against Colorado State?
I do like Virginia in this game. You mentioned it. They like to make games ugly. This is a Colorado State team that's been in a bit of a slump as of late, and that plays right into Virginia's hands defensively with Reese Beekman, Ryan Dunn, two all-league caliber defenders that are going to be physical with you. You know, they typically play better at home. It almost feels like that's a place where you go and it's impossible to do the things that you want to do. So on a neutral site, it'll be interesting to see how that translates. But, you know, just given what Virginia has done, you know, they were a miraculous banked in three-pointer away from going to the ACC championship game. So I'm sure that there's a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouths from that. And they have an opportunity to win this game and come to Charlotte, which is a place where they want to exercise some NCAA tournament demons, because last time they were in Charlotte for the NCAA tournament, they were the first ever #1 seed to lose. So I'm sure Virginia is motivated by that as well. And also to prove to the naysayers who don't believe that they should be in the tournament that they do belong.
Yeah, well, speaking of which, let's get to Purdue, another team that has that same feeling. Their odds to win the Midwest are +165. You would not catch me putting my dollar on Purdue. I got whoever else. Pick someone else, Gilbert, here. Tennessee, Creighton, Gonzaga, Kansas, Texas, TCU, South Carolina. I mean, Gilbert, I don't see Purdue winning this. I mean, how many years in a row we're going to go down this road thinking that they're going to get to the Final Four? I don't see it happening. Do you have a team that you like in this Midwest region?
You know, I will say real quick, the last time we saw a number 1 seed team lose, they came back the next year to win the whole thing. So maybe history repeats itself. That being said, looking at the rest of this region, I think Creighton's a really strong team at the 3 seed. I think that'll be an interesting one. There's a potential matchup looming between Texas and Tennessee, which could be a lot of narratives. Rick Barnes, former team in Charlotte, the region that he calls home as well. But that being said, that Virginia, Colorado State team, whoever comes out of that, has a good chance of upsetting that Texas team. We usually see teams from the first 4 make some noise and make a run in the tournament. So looking at the region, I like Creighton, but don't sleep on history repeating itself with Purdue and them finally defeating the narrative.
Yeah, you'll be here next week, Gilbert. They will not be in the NCAA tournament. They'll be out. Mark it down.
I'll take your word
get
for
out
it,
your
Craig.
pen, get out your paper, get out your pencil, whatever it is, put it in your phone. Craig said Purdue is not going to be in the NCAA tournament this time next week. We'll
Fair
see.
enough.
Gilbert, thanks for coming on the show.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the Purdue that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like This is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that lightning in a bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Matthew Waters is with us ahead of the madness in the NCAA tournament. He'll be filling out a bracket and predicting, of course, that Purdue will win the national. He won't. He'll pick somebody from. I don't know. Who do you got, Matt? Before we get into this, who do you think wins the championship? It's like so boring to pick the 1 seeds. Give me a non-1 seed that wins.
Because I was going to say Purdue, but hey, Arizona too. Arizona. Okay, I think I like Arizona.
Okay, fair enough. They never win either, but it's okay. You can go with that. All right. Let's dive into what ESPN was hoping to be a big success, which is, of course, parlays, which are ruling the world in sportsbooks right now. FanDuel, DraftKings, same-day parlays, what everybody wants to do. $5 to make $1 billion, right? Like I said, what thinks they're going to get. What's going on here with ESPN Bet? Their product not particularly making enough waves?
Yeah, so we heard from, remember, they're partnered with Penn Entertainment on the gaming side of things. Disney is. They signed this $2 billion partnership back in August. And we heard a couple of different things from CEO Jay Snowden. And one of them is, yes, that their parlay product just is not where it needs to be yet. And he said that he believes that is the gap when it comes down to the difference between ESPN Bet and the leaders, DraftKings and FanDuel. And so what does he mean by the parlays being not up to snuff, right? Because anybody can go on and say, hey, I want to parlay, this team with this team winning and this team's going to win and this team's going to win. That's not what he means in this situation. We're talking about the same game parlay product. Parlays are already a high enough margin business. I love coming on and here and telling you about when states are holding 20 to 30% from their parlays. Same game parlays hold even more, Craig. And so naturally, this is the product that these sports books want to be pushing. Usually, if it's something that a sports book is telling you to bet or it's something on the front page, that means they make money from it, right? And the same game parlay is something that is taking over for casual bettors. And when ESPN Bet just doesn't have the same depth in its offerings, that's going to push those kind of bettors to the other sports books. And look, Snowden cited a couple of different statistics that were interesting. He belongs to this data analytics company called Sensor Tower. It costs 5-6 figures. He wants everybody to get this data. It's not really feasible for everybody to get this data. But look, he said that ESPN Bet, while it has a user share in like the mid to high teens, they're just not getting the same dollar amount, the same wallet share as they should be with that. And again, that's because they could sign up with ESPN Bet as much as they want. When they don't get the kind of depth in that same game parlay option that they want, they're going to go elsewhere. Now, he said that it's starting to tick up after football season, which does make sense. A football season is kind of the prime place for these same game parlays because, I mean, gosh, how many different options do you have in a football game to bundle 2, 3, 4, 5 things together and get something that you feel pretty confident about, right? Going into March Madness, he feels pretty good about this because March Madness is one of those situations where, one, not every state even allows you to bet on player props. So you couldn't do a single game parlay in some states with this player scoring X, this player scoring Y, this player scoring Z. And the other thing is, look at Thursday and Friday. How many games do we have each day? And people are going to be not going through those individually. They're going to say, okay, I got this guy, this team, and just make a straight parlay. So that's what he's hoping to see. Now, the work until football season is all going to be on this parlay product. They really want to get it up to snuff by the time the NFL kicks off again in September. And, it's one of those things where Jay Snowden may just be a little bit too honest of a CEO. After his company had bid to get into New York a couple years ago, he told investors on an investor call that nobody's ever going to make money in New York. And he said he's explaining all of these shortcomings of the ESPN Bet app that is on Penn's own proprietary technology that they didn't necessarily have to move to when they did. We know that Kambi, their old technology provider, has a pretty good same game parlay product. Bet Rivers is very happy with it, and they're showing improved margins and profit based off of the product. But Penn had shifted away from that over the MLB All-Star break in July. Now they're on their own technology, and they didn't at that point know for sure that the ESPN bet was switching up. But it's almost like, if this technology was not going to be as efficient as it could be for NFL season, why would you launch it right before NFL season? So there's a lot of questions there about why Penn is doing what they're doing, and they don't necessarily have the best rep when it comes to their digital gaming roadmap as it is right now because of the losses that they've taken from Barstool. But Snowden said that ESPN Bet, the most important thing they can do, the most valuable thing they can do, is build up their database ahead of potential iGaming releases in different states. It's the reason why they paid $25 million to get into New York, which, by the way, he's saying you'll break even in New York now, not lose money. But the iGaming factor of that, and building up the database for sports betting too. Obviously, not everybody that goes to New York lives in New York, and so they can sign up for ESPN Bet while in New York and be building that database of people all over the country for when they get to more states. So it was Jay gave us a lot. Jay gave us a lot on ESPN Bet right now. And I think to take away from that is they know they're not where they need to be. And that's good when you can acknowledge a problem. That's the first step, right? They're going to be working on that parlay product for months until NFL season. And on the Disney side of things, remember, they're invested in this too. That work is all going to be on the integration side of things to get ESPN Bet worked into the ESPN Media app. So if you're looking at a game preview and you say, oh, yeah, I should take that line. You click on it, ESPN Bet opens with that bet ticket populated already, and you can place the bet right there. So those are the two main factors that Penn and Disney are working on to get ESPN a little bit closer to the competition when the football season kicks off this year.
Yeah, and it does make sense that some of the technology would be the shortcoming there. And again, trying to pivot over, as you said, from Barstool, a lot of that adds up. It also adds up that other sports betting companies would prefer not to outsource their technology, which it appears is what MGM is trying to accomplish here. And Matthew, if they're able to get this done, then our stories about some of these sports betting operators outsourcing technology may come to an end as well.
Yeah, it could. This is really interesting from MGM. MGM, the BetMGM brand, is co-owned by both MGM and a gaming company publicly traded in London called Entain. And so Entain really brings the backbone of the platform to BetMGM. And MGM is now bringing the BetMGM brand into Europe and international markets. Now, that's through this company that they acquired called LeoVegas. LeoVegas was a pretty successful iGaming company operating in Europe. MGM bought them, and LeoVegas is still on that Kambi technology that we just talked about in Europe, in the UK. And so MGM is saying, look, we want to own our own now. Now, what does that mean? I don't know if that means that they're going to switch away from what Entain does in the US. That seems a little short-sighted to me because BetMGM is really figuring things out by now. But yeah, if you can cut out some of those third-party costs in the international market, who knows where BetMGM is going to go. They're in London. They had kind of a tough week in London with the Cheltenham races. And, MGM CEO Bill Hornbuckle tried to say how great they were doing at the races and couldn't even pronounce Cheltenham. So that tells you a little bit about their international going so far. Right. But what I thought was interesting, as much as they want to own their own sports betting technology, they're talking about owning their own live dealer technology as well. And Craig, if you're not familiar with the live dealer games, this is when you go online to an online casino and you open it up and you have a real human sitting in front of you ready to deal you the cards. They want to stop outsourcing that. They want to own that. They want to put their brand name on it.
All right, let's close it out here and get to EQL's new perfect game bracket, very similar to the lottery, where it's like playing against a pool, but I'm going to need a little bit of an explanation here before this gets started.
It's really interesting, Craig. I like the idea of this. You don't see too many twists on the bracket game because how can you, right? But EQL this is their roots. This is what they've done. They take sports and work it into the lottery somehow. Basically, everybody knows there are a lot of different brackets out there that can be had. It's 9.2 quintillion. Now, that is 9.2 billion billions, Craig. That's a very big number. Everybody that joins this perfect bracket lottery game is going to get a share of those 9.2 quintillion outcomes. So basically, look, you're not going to be viewing every hundreds of million or billion brackets you have, right? But there is going to be something that says almost in near real time, you'll be able to see how your brackets are playing out, and you'll know which brackets have a chance, which don't. And at the end of it, Craig, somebody is going to wind up winning with a perfect bracket. So like I said, it's a twist on something you don't usually get too many twists to, and it could be cool. Now, it's a lot of brackets, a lot of technology out there just to win $500, but it is a free game. So, maybe that'll grow in the future.
Yeah, I've never heard the term or number quintillion before. You just gave that to me here on the show, Matthew. So you've accomplished a lot, and you didn't even know coming into the show. Thanks again. I'm going to use it.
Thank you,
I'm going to use it at some point. All right, we got to take a quick break. There's a better than quintillion chance. We will hear from Ben Stevens and Brady Kannon next.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the movie that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
this
is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Can never get enough preview of the NCAA tournament on the show today. Brady Cannon's going to join us in a few minutes. He'll give us some of his best bets. We'll also check in now with Ben Stevens, who you can see every day on the early line, including the rest of the week as we get ready for Bracket Central here on SportsGrid. Here is a preview with Ben as he takes a look at the East region and South region of the upcoming NCAA tournament.
Craig, on this Tuesday, the madness officially begins in the 2024 Men's NCAA Tournament. First four action in Dayton, Ohio, that will impact everything we see throughout the rest of the big dance. We look at the East and the South regions today, starting with what is by far the most difficult region in all of the 2024 NCAA Tournament. That really shouldn't be, because the number one overall seed in the reigning national champs, Tristan Newton and UConn, are in this portion of the bracket, and yet it is very difficult top to bottom. 16 teams in the East region, Craig. 11 won their conference tournament title to reach this stage in the NCAA tournament, including Connecticut, through the Big East. UConn enters as a plus 110 favorite to win the East region. What is winning the East region? That is a berth in the Final Four in Phoenix, Arizona, the first weekend of April. Again, UConn the favorite at plus 110. The 2 seed at the bottom of the bracket, Iowa State plus 450, second best number. Auburn only 50 cents back at 5-1. Illinois, that 3 seed in the East region, 8-1. So, Craig, we turn our attention quickly to the Auburn Tigers. They're the 4 seed in the East region, a 5-1 number. If things go as planned, it would be UConn and Auburn in a Sweet 16 matchup in Boston in that East regional semifinal. That would be a showdown, but you can see how the odds are optimistic about Auburn in that potential of taking on UConn. BYU here as well. And Craig, as you see, San Diego State and FAU, 21-1 on the Aztecs, 30-1 on the Owls, joining UConn. 3 of the 4 teams in this field that appeared in the Final Four a year ago in the East region. 3 of the 4 teams from last year's Final Four in the East region. It is a very difficult portion of the bracket. Now to the South region we go, where Houston is the top overall seed. Plus 140 for the Cougs to win the South and get back to a Final Four for the second time in the last 4 NCAA tournaments. Marquette is the 2 seed. Their outlook for this run in March will be very dependent on their point guard's health. That is Tyler Kolek, second best number at plus 550. Duke is the 4 seed, plus 650 for the Blue Devils. Kentucky, the 3 seed, at 7-1. And Wisconsin is that 5 seed at 12-1. The Badgers, a difficult opening round matchup against James Madison. That will be a spot on the bracket, Craig. Many people look for that common 12-5 upset. So the madness begins tonight. First 4 action in Dayton, Ohio. And then just a couple of days away from the round of 64, when those East and South region play will be underway. And we will see how the path through the madness lays out.
Thanks very much, Ben. We'll check back with Ben on tomorrow's show. Now let's turn it over to Brady Kannon. Of course, you watch him all over SportsGrid. He'll be very busy this weekend. He's actually in the place you really want to be. He's in Las Vegas. So I guess, Brady, here is the question for you. I mean, with as many years as you've been there, and it's like, I guess when people ask me, like, I live in South Florida, and so they say, because I'm near Orlando, you know what, let's use South Beach. They ask me, because I live in South Florida, how many times you've been to South Beach? I'm like, it's a tourist attraction. Like, I don't go there anymore. So I would ask you, Brady, is that a fair question? Like, do you sit in the books from, I guess it's 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. Pacific time all the way through? Because I know people travel all over the country just to experience the madness in person there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It does start, I believe, 9:15-ish is when the first game tips Pacific time on Thursday. And it is truly madness. I've been down there before. I don't recall, in all my 30 years of being here, I don't know if I've spent an entire day down there on one of those opening Thursdays or Fridays to kick off the tournament. I actually, being here for so long, it's kind of a pro move to either, spend a lot of time in the books last week for the conference championship games, or skip ahead to next weekend for the Sweet 16. The crowds are less. The prices might be down a little bit. You're not going to really take advantage of good pricing in March. March is one of the busiest months of the entire year out here in Las Vegas for everything, for tee times, of course, the basketball tournament. We've got NASCAR. There's so many things going on in the month of March. So, pricing wise, it's hard to find a dip. But as far as the crowds, the biggest crowd is this week. So you can avoid some of the crowds by coming other weeks of the NCAA tournament. But, there's pros and cons both ways. It's arguable that this is the most exciting week, too, because you do have 32 games and you're going all day long. And all the sports books are fantastic. They've got promotions going, a lot of different ways you can wager on these games. A lot of guys come out here with, groups of 8 to 10 buddies and what have you. And it's a great time for sure. I think we had obviously the Super Bowl here in town.
Right.
Even just for the Super Bowl when it's not been in Las Vegas is a great time. But I kind of like the madness better because you've got stuff going all day long and into the evening.
Yeah, I did it once. It was a lot of fun. I went for, I believe it was the first 2 days I went for the Thursday, Friday, and then I flew back on a Saturday. But yeah, it's an amazing time. All right, updated odds here for the national championship. UConn is the prohibitive favorite at plus 370. Houston, Purdue, both about the same, 6-1, 7-1. Arizona's 13-1. North Carolina 17-1. Tennessee the same. Then Iowa State and Auburn. But here's what we know, Brady. Expect the unexpected. I don't know. I mean, I guess somebody from this list could win the national championship, but you and I have been doing this long enough to know we get so comfortable with these 1 seeds and these 2 seeds and forget that out of every 10 years, it's 8 out of the 10 years or 9 out of the 10 years. It's never any of these teams that ends up winning the championship. It's always an incredible finish. What do you think we're in store for this upcoming weekend?
Well, it's a great question, the $64,000 question. But when you look at what has happened recently, I mean, last year we didn't have anybody higher than a 4 seed in the Final Four. San Diego State, Florida Atlantic, UConn, and Miami. Now, UConn ends up winning it. I believe they were the highest seed of the bunch. Yes. I believe a 4 seed were the Huskies. But that kind of shows you the parity and the randomness that has kind of evolved lately in college basketball. I think that certainly has to do with NIL and the transfer portal and all the same reasons we hear about, on the college football side of things as well. But let's also keep in mind this tournament for many years has been very chalky. I went to the Final Four a couple of years ago in New Orleans, and it was absolute blue blood. It was Duke, Carolina, Kansas, and Villanova. So you might see that type of thing. Maybe it reverts back to that type of thing this year. One thing I can tell you is, for the most part, a lot of people like to use Ken Pom rankings. And if you look at Ken Pom, it's teams that rank inside the top 20, 25. You can kind of skew it however you want. But basically, it covers you pretty well if you look inside the top 25 for Ken Pom's top offensive teams and top defensive teams. Teams that rank inside the top 25 in both categories, those are teams that have tend to go on to get to the Final Four, if not win a national championship in recent history. And Arizona qualifies for that. Marquette qualifies for that. UConn, Houston, I think Tennessee qualifies in there. So, you can whittle it down a little bit to maybe 7 or 8 teams that, have proven over time to be, check a lot of boxes as far as a qualifier.
Okay, fair enough. Now, who are the teams that you like, Brady, that, let's say, no one's talking about winning the championship now? Some of the long shot odds, or at least the ones that are not in the 5 to 6 to 1 range.
I think some good long shot teams are like St. Mary's. At the beginning of the year, I bet the Colorado Buffaloes at 100-1. Their numbers probably still similar to that. I haven't checked. Yeah. But I do kind of feel like we're going to get one of the, more powerful teams coming out on top. And, despite what was in the Final Four last year, UConn was pretty clearly the best team and probably is coming into this year as well. They could certainly repeat. It was a long time ago, back in January, when I made a couple of bets on Arizona and Alabama to win it all. I still like my Arizona ticket. I'm not so thrilled about the Alabama ticket. I've got a good number on it, but their defense is 112th in the country, according to Ken Pom. While their offense is first, their defense is quote unquote dead last. So I don't know. And we've seen them struggle as of late. I don't think they can get all the way home. Arizona, I think, has a great shot, 8th in offense, 12th in defense, according to Ken Pom. So they fit that category of having, been inside the top 25, both on offense and defense. And then I bet a couple of more just about a month ago or so, 25-1 on both Marquette and Iowa State. Now, that Iowa State number has certainly come down after their win in the Big 12 Conference Championship over Houston. And they don't, Marquette does qualify for top 25. Iowa State does not. They're 55th offensively, but number 1 on defense. And I certainly think that can go a long way as well. We saw them, how they shut down the Houston Cougars to just 41 points last weekend. So I think Iowa State's a player. The problem is they're in the toughest region, in the East region, and they've got to deal with UConn. So Marquette, Iowa State, Alabama, and Arizona are the futures tickets I have in pocket. Going to fill out my bracket a little bit later today and probably make some individual game wagers as well. But we'll see. I think I'm sitting pretty good with those 4 teams. I've got a shot anyway. And Craig, how it goes, you want to have a chance to monetize at some point. If you can get one of those teams to the Final Four, you should be able to hedge your way into a profit.
Yeah, got to have the hedging available for this tournament, or at least have the opportunity. All right, so we said that if Scottie Scheffler won the back-to-back, we would say, hey, Brady, you were right. He ended up breaking the streak, and you were right. Okay, so he did. He won the back-to-back championships. He knocked it out. That's the good news. The bad news is that everybody is taking this week off at the Valspar. What is going on here? This field, Brady. I mean, Xander's in it. That's great. But what do you do with a field like this? I mean, there's some decent names, but the main guys don't seem to be interested in.
Well, yeah, the Masters is just 3 weeks away. We've got 3 more tournaments before the Masters, and you come off 2 straight signature events, so it's understandable. But we've got Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, Xander Schauffele, Sam Burns, Jordan Spieth, so not too shabby. The shortest shot I landed on was Justin Thomas. And despite missing the cut last week at the Players, he's played very well here at the Valspar as well. He's got 3 top 10s and 2 top 20s. I got him at a little better than 16-1. He missed the cut last week at the Players, as I mentioned, but he gained over 4 shots, over 4.5 shots in those 2 rounds that he played with his irons. He ranks 11th in this field for strokes gained approach and 11th in this field for strokes gained around the greens in the last 36 rounds. I think he's going to bounce back from that missed cut last week. And then I went with some longer bombs. Doug Gim at 46-1, Andrew Putnam at 70-1, had a good finish a couple weeks ago at Bay Hill. And then my longest shot, Sam Ryder, who comes off of a top 20 finish last week at the Players at 95-1. So we came close with Xander last week. We'll see if we can get one home this week in Palm Harbor.
All right, we'll be right back.
SportsGrid's going to have you covered for this NCAA tournament.
That's the movie that we know. When it's win or go home, they love to go home.
Tennessee's now in my phony club. They should all get together and drink green tea.
Furman's going to have a chance. That is a team I'm betting on right now.
We are feeling this. You are feeling this at home. The excitement and the atmosphere.
Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like This is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to
Penn
find
State's
a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But
Right.
if we make them a third,
They get in.
Third,
This is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to be
rule.
better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that lightning in a bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
I bought into Tennessee with their veteran team. I really did. But that's, out the window. That ship has sailed today.
A team that wins no games in their conference tournament has never gone on to win the national championship. So you can put Tennessee in that boat. You can put Duke in that boat from last night. You can put Creighton in that boat from last night. They all lost their first conference tournament game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live. Prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live. Overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Social media is always a fun spot to catch your favorite athlete popping off about something. And indeed, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, yesterday was your day. Stephon Diggs goes to social media yesterday, basically says, hey, look, he is ready for whatever in the upcoming season. He forgot the H. Does that mean he's going to Houston? Houston Texans? That's why? H? No H? Whatever? I don't know. I don't think so. Either way, Stephon Diggs basically saying to himself and to everybody else, maybe I've played my final year in Buffalo. Didn't we go through this last year with Stephon Diggs in Buffalo? And then he ended up going back to the Bills and playing once again with Josh Allen and company. But I always love these athletes who go on social media. They, sometimes make a big deal about something and then nothing ends up happening. I don't know if that's going to be the case this season with Stephon Diggs, but naturally Gabe Davis is gone. I'm guessing they're going to draft a receiver of some kind, but, Steph, you're probably going to stay with Josh Allen another season. Bills are going to compete, maybe chance at the Super Bowl yet again. So it is social media season, I think, in the NFL. So keep an eye for your favorite athlete. Maybe they'll tell you something that you don't know, but got to put the H in there, by the way, Steph, for whatever. The H is missing. So some people feel like that's a sign that it's H. Houston, right? See that? See it in the comments. Anyway, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks to Brady Kannon for coming on. Of course, Ben for his preview videos. Gilbert McGregor of Sporting News. Matthew Waters of Legal Sports Report. As always, thanks to our associate producer, Frank. Our producer, Michael Cohen. I'm Craig Mish. Coming up next, we have the early line, followed by Coast to Coast, giving you a preview of some of the first 4 games that are going to be played tonight and tomorrow night. Stay tuned to that. Also, NHL action, NBA action, and maybe even a preview of baseball action. Guess what? Opening day is overnight. It's true. The Dodgers and Padres are getting set to start the season overseas. So while you're sleeping, that'll be the first game played. And then when you wake up and you tune back into NewsWire, we'll give you a recap as to what happened. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Smarter to be on SportsGrid. Early line next, Coast to Coast after, and then in-game live game time decisions all throughout the night. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow. Next edition of NewsWire, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here on SportsGrid.
smarter to be on SportsGrid.